We are learning the Likkutei Sichot, Volume 2, Parshas Balak, and we're in Section 3. So this is a new Sichot. We finished the last one yesterday. Katuv Sfarim, it says in the holy books. Which ones? So here it says from Shimshon of Astropoli. And Shimshon of Astropoli is an interesting figure in and of himself, who's worthy of talking about. But I'm not prepared to talk about him. So he died in Kiddush Hashem eventually. I don't know. I don't remember. In Tach and Tat, I think. Sheyesh leBilam zika leAmalek. That Bilam has a connection with Amalek. It's very famous, right? Because the last two letters of Bilam are the first two letters of Amalek. And they share another letter, the Lamed. So the only thing that's different is the Kuf and the Bet. So he says, when you write them, so here's the real remez though. When you write them, שהמילים בלעם ועמלק נכתבות בשתי שורות מקבילות. So let's write it out so that we know what we're talking about. So here is Bet, Lamed, Ayin, Mem, and then we write Amalek. So here we have, I'll show it up to the screen, so I show backwards, right? We have Bilam and we have Amalek in two lines. But then if I do the squares, the first two letters and the last two letters of each one spells Amalek. You didn't know this? Okay. So this is the type of remazim, type of illusions that Shimshon Astropoli is famous for. And he wrote a whole book in order to write a commentary on it. They didn't know back then about footnotes. There was no such concept as footnotes. Because it wasn't like, that was a later invention. Could be that already, there were a little bit of footnotes. But there wasn't no concept yet that you could write a book like we do today on Word. You write a book or on InDesign, and the whole bottom you can write footnotes which are bigger than the book. They didn't have that concept back then. Because so that's how it worked. You wrote a book called the Torah, and then you could write a commentary on it. That's how they thought about it. So he really wanted to write the commentary. He said, I can't write the commentary without there being an original book that I'm commenting on. So he had to write the original book also. It's a famous thing. Ken, but there was already a book in existence called the Shulchan Aruch, so he could write the commentary on it. But his commentary is not as big as the book. Here we have that the commentary is bigger than the book. Okay. So that's just how it was thought of then, right? It was at first when people saw this, they thought he had found, or at least he said, I had found an ancient book, and here's my commentary on it. Later it was learned that he wrote the book itself. Okay. Today, you don't need that. You just go to Word, and you write as much as you want in the footnotes. If it's bigger than the book itself, so be it. But they didn't have that concept back then. Anyway, in any case, so... No, he's Tach and Tat. So he's 1648. He's before the Baal Shem Tov. Yeah, they're at the same time. So he says, so you get that, and what we just saw. So that's the first paragraph. Why Ava V'ira? Because so he says this finding that I have, it's also connected to another finding that I have. I think this might be a little older than him, but I'm not sure. I did it backwards. So here we have the two words Yirah and Ava, right? Same thing. Okay. Write Yirah and Ava, and I take the blocks, the two blocks. Can you give this one too? Anyway, so these were his two findings. So he says this, it's like a gematria, like Nachash and Amalek, right? Nachash and Mashiach. So here he's saying that because there's a geometric similarity to the two, so there's also it's like having a gematria that's equal.
If you can do the same trick with both of them, then that's
right. So it's the same thing. Hizber ladvarim ha'amurim. So it's interesting that this is something that the Rebbe would bring, but this is very, this is not something you would think the Rebbe would bring. I would imagine that the Rebbe knew this.
Every sefer that's ever written.
No, I don't think he read every sefer, but he read a lot of Sfarim, and he had a lot of things to bring, and he brings this. Hizber ladvarim ha'amurim. So what does this all mean? Now we want to explain it in Pnimius, not just because you can do, as you said, the same formulation, the same geometric formulation on both of them. הטעם לכך שעמלק היה מסוגל להילחם עם בני ישראל היה משום שמוצאו היה מעשיו. The reason Amalek could even battle the Jewish people is because his lineage is from Esav. ולפיכך טען שגם הוא נינו של יצחק ובן נינו של אברהם, ולכן רשאי גם הוא לחוות דעה בענייני תורה וקדושה. He says, because my lineage starts from Avram and Yitzchak, and then it happens to be Esav, and what's the difference? Yitzchak had two sons, Esav and Yaakov.
Balak wasn't really directly from Esav anyway.
Why not? Completely directly. No, Elipaz married her. He's a son. The fact that he had a Pelagish, who cares? Back then there was no difference. Yeah. And I told you the continuation of this Sichot, which Rav Yitzchak said, which is that if you take the 5 generations, Avram, Yitzchak, Esav, Elipaz, Amalek, and you divide them by 5, what do you get? No. You have to do Avram, Yitzchak. Do you have a calculator here? I don't remember what it is.
The gematria is the same divided by 5.
Yeah, but where's it?
It's a secret.
Yeah, I see. I forgot the gematria. It's so good that I should do it. Here we go. Okay. So we have 248, that's Avram, plus 208, that's Yitzchak, plus Esav is 376, right? Plus Eliphaz, how much is he? 97, 98, 128, right? Once again. 128. Plus Amalek is famously 3.
So famous you got right now.
280, right? It's 1240 divided by 5 is 248.
Which is
Avram. So it says it's 5 times Avram. My whole lineage is all Avram. You can't say that about someone else. It's a very important lineage. So he says, I can also voice an opinion about Torah and mitzvos. I can say something about holiness as well. Look at my lineage. It's 5 times Avram. And then he says, but because he was allowed a little bit to enter into call it the academy, into learning about Kedusha, about holiness. So that's where the source came, that we say that he knows his master, he knows who created the world, but then he willingly, deliberately rebels against him. Now, how did he come to know him? Because he was allowed in. Because he said, I'm also the same lineage. So he thought, okay, no. So let him in. And that's what happened. כך גם בלעם. בלעם was the same. שעליו אומרת הגמרא בסנהדרין שמוצאו מלבן. Bilam came from a lineage from Lavan. Right? And it's interesting that it says this, because what does it say in the Gemara? The Gemara, it says that there's the same person. In the Gemara it says that he's a lineage. Right. No, that Beor was the son of Lavan, and Bilam was Beor's son. So it was 3 generations. Lavan, Beor, and Bilam. Yeah. How does this even make sense though? Lavan was in Haran, and Bilam is from where? We don't know. We don't know. No, we don't know. It says nobody knows what his nation is.
We wandered around.
So in any case, just to say that in Kabbalah, the way it's described is that Lavan is Bilam. It's the same person, because in Kabbalah there's it's a much more essentialist type of gaze at the world. It's a different type of perspective. So the moment somebody is someone's descendant and he's like him, it's the same person. That's how it's described.
That's not Pinchas in the yard.
Right, exactly. כך גם בלעם שעליו אומרת הגמרא בסננו שמוצאו מלבן. לבן טען הבנות בנותיי והבנים בניי וכל אשר אתה רואה לי. What did Lavan say when he was about to part from Yaakov? He said, the daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, and everything, this all came from me, Yaakov. You have no part in this. This is really all mine. Here he says, שגם לא יש קשר לבני ישראל שכן מבנותיו נבנה בית ישראל. So he says, I also have a connection, at least a connection. Yeah, everybody says, it means he thinks everything is his. But at least he has a connection because the house of Israel was built from his daughters. So they came from Rishon. Right? They came from his father, from Nachol, not from Lavan. In any case. Zu eifo hora'ah lechol dor. This is actually an instruction for every generation. כשבא מישהו ואומר היפוכן של תורה ומצוות, גם אם הוא שולף תעודה שהוא נינו של יצחק בנינו של אברהם, ושממנו נולדו אלו שמהם נבנה בית ישראל יש לומר לו. So if somebody comes up and he says, here's my card. I'm a Jew. Not just any Jew. I'm a descendant of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Completely. And now he says the opposite of what Torah and mitzvah say to do. He's a Jew though. So what is the Rebbe saying? Ayud dvarim ma'olam. We've seen this before. Unfortunately, having a good lineage is not a guarantee of the person being credible. He's not credible. Even though he has this great lineage. So what? The moment he says something opposite from the Torah and mitzvos, here's what you say to him. Anu ein lanu ela avinu shebashamayim. We have no one but our Father in heaven. The only instrument we have to measure the truthfulness of any claim is Torah itself. That's it. That's our instrument of measurement. It's not your lineage and not anything else. Nothing else can be what determines whether something is something we accept or we don't accept. If it fits what the Torah says, wonderful. But if it's the opposite of the Torah, it doesn't matter if you're from Bilam, you're from Amalek, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. We have nothing to do with it. אך כדי להבחין אם הדבר מתאים לתורה או לא, הרי כשאדם ניגש לדבר מתוך הרגשת ישות עצמו, אי אפשר לו להבהיר לעצמו מדוע אינו רוצה לקבל הוראה מסוימת. So he says, but when you're using the Torah to measure something, whether it's true or not, according to the Torah principles, it says there's a big impediment. The impediment is the person's feeling of self. Okay? Argashat hayesh. He feels his yeshut. He feels that he's important. Okay? He's someone. So sometimes the reason why he might reject something is not because it's really wrong, but because I didn't say it. The NIH syndrome, as it's called, not invented here. I didn't say it, must not be right. It's not so simple. Maybe the reason that you are not willing to see the truth in what's being said is because you didn't say it. Or you don't hold by it because it doesn't give you the appropriate amount of honor that you invented this. So it says the connection here is that if someone comes like Bilam and Amalek, to really measure whether they're saying the truth or not, you have to have ava and yira. You have to have fear of God and love of God. What does it mean? כפי שמשתמע מנקרא אמורה ששתי המילים יחד, וכפי שאמר בתניא על היראה שהיא ראשית העבודה ועיקרה ושורשה. כשניגש האדם, so the beginning of everything has to be that you have fear and love of God. And so then, כשניגש האדם בהכנה מוקדמת של אהבה ויראה, when you come prepared with love and fear, האהבה כשורש לכל מצוות תעשה ויראה כשורש לכל מצוות לא תעשה. with fear being the source, the origin from which emanate all the prohibitive mitzvos, and ava, love, being the origin from which emanate all the prescriptive mitzvos. כאמור בחינוך קטן שבתניא. הוא מוסיף שם שיש בזה עניין החינוך, פירוש הדבר שאף שאינו בר דעה וידע איניש בנפשי, ניתן לחנכו באהבה ויראה. We have someone called Avram calling you.
I'll call you back in 3 minutes, okay? One joke. I'll call you in 3 minutes. Bye. My son is grandma.
So when a person comes prepared with these two qualities, love and fear of heaven, as it says in the Chinuch Katan, in the introduction, the second part of the Tanya, the Shari Yichud Vaimuna, the introduction there says that even if a person is not knowledgeable, okay, then by teaching him love and fear of God, meaning he doesn't know enough Torah, but just by teaching him love and fear of God, when we say knowledgeable, we don't mean that he has information. Not even learned. It's like you're talking to him and he doesn't get what you're saying. There's something missing in his consciousness. So what we mean is he's not fully aware, he's not fully awake. There's something, he's asleep to a certain extent. It could be that he's a bright person, but somehow he's not connecting to what he's learning in Torah. So he says it's enough to teach him, or by teaching him love and fear of God, you open him up to everything. This is almost like a reverse principle, because the consciousness is what's supposed to give birth to the love and fear. But here, it's like love and fear are going to awaken the consciousness. In any case, so when you have love and fear of God, then he doesn't have to be impressed properly from Amalek and Bilam, who came from Avram and Yitzchak. למרות שבישראל לא קם כמשה, אבל באומות העולם קם אומן ובלעם, even though Bilam was a prophet as great as Moshe. והרי לאחר המשל הניתן בספרי, לפיו נמשל בלעם לטבח וכולי, קיימת בכל זאת דוגמה מסוימת ביניהם. So I don't know what he's talking about, so I can't explain this. But apparently there's some parable in the Sifrei, in the Medrash, that Bilam was like a slaughterer. So there was some comparison between him and Moshe, that it wasn't just that he was as great, but there's actually some basis for it. אפילו פשוט שבפשוטים שבישראל כשהוא צועד לפי הסדר של יראה ולאחרי אהבה, and that's the way that the order is there. You have to put the yira on top. It doesn't work if you put the yira on the bottom, by the way. The yira has to go on top. Yira and ahava. That's also something you have to notice about that geometric form. So if you have this order, even in the first fear of God and then love of God, then he can really judge whether to be impressed or not to be impressed by someone who comes and says something. Okay? So he says you need the Ava and the Yira to judge properly whether you are rejecting this for the right reason. Okay? Yeah, you liked it. Okay. Wonderful.
Yes,